Yeah, to start. Let's go.
Cool. I'm putting you on live. Hey Ben, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Nick. How are you?
Hey, doing great. Thanks a lot.
Very good.
As you can see, if I hope you also have a stream or live somewhere on phone, you can see I have a large apple on my face stuck here. Hope you like that.
Very apt.
Is that going to be face of everyone? So
Well, pretty much. Or maybe it could be a dog or something. Could be anything. But
yeah, but
uh,
anything other than what you can identify as someone's face,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
I've got you down as male though. Actually, I can see that you're male. Unless you're a very hairy female. Right? I don't
ah,
know.
but that's fingerprinting. That again is not
Yeah.
allowed, right?
Not allowed. Not possible. Not possible.
That's
Yeah.
you're doing illegal things from Apple's perspective.
I'm breaking the system. Yeah,
You're finding ways around the system.
absolutely. Well, that's what we have to do now, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As a marketers, we are used to doing that. We have to do it even more after
Yeah.
new changes to iOS 4. Hey,
Yeah.
welcome everyone. This is a session about what it means for a marketer after changes to iOS 4, the privacy policies, and then the changes that have been made by Facebook to comply with those privacy policies of Apple. What does it mean for a marketer? What changes you are facing, and what changes you have to do at your end? So welcome to Measured. Welcome to My Growth Club. My Growth Club is a community of marketer that we are trying to build. And if you want to sign up for this community for sneak preview, please go to mygrowth.club and sign up for sneak preview and early preview. Today I have with me Ben Hayes. Ben Hayes has been doing everything in digital marketing for last 20 years. You name it, he has started with SEO, then PPC, analytics, CRM, you name it. He has done everything in digital marketing. Right now, for some odd reason, his window shows up as black square. But trust me, it's not. He's not a black square. He's quite handsome guy. So Ben,
If you say so, yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I think actually the black square is very apt. You can't see me. You don't know who I am. You have no idea what I what I like or what I don't like, what I'm wearing, whether I'm male or female. In fact, you don't know me at all.
and
And that is kind of what we're going to be talking about, I guess, today, in a nutshell.
yep.
So the black screen for me is actually very apt. But
That's a good one, Ben. So, you have been doing digital marketing for 20 years, but are you ready to unlearn everything that you have learned for last 20 years and learn new things which are coming up with privacy policies and stuff?
yeah, absolutely. So rip up the old playbook in with the new one, right? So we'll have to see what to do and how to move forward. So I have to say, if you ask me, this is almost like the beginning of 1,000 cuts of death
Oh
to
my God.
digital advertising as we know it. This is like the first stab has gone in, and I think there's more of this to come. And it's going to be interesting what happens when the walled gardens start erecting, and we have to play in many different gardens, independent of each other, not knowing who we're talking to, whether or not our messages are reaching the people that we want them to reach, and it's going to be quite a strange path that we're all going to tread in the next sort of year or so, as these things start to happen. But this is the first big move, and let's see what comes of it, I guess. But I hope with the session today we can give you a little bit of insights as to what to expect. Not only the changes that iOS 14's brought in, but also the what we can potentially expect from other players like an Android, a Google, that are out there, and this is only the first point, the only first guy to sort of take the plunge as such, but there's definitely talk of Google doing similar things. And I guess what we try to uncover today is not only just what the implications are of Facebook, but the implications are actually going to be far and wide, and not just for Facebook, it's going to be everywhere, actually. So I hope that we can sort of have a good chat around that and see where we go with it. But yeah.
Cool. So I think this is the first wall that has been built by Apple and has been complied by Facebook, but there are many walls to come, probably higher and thicker. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think as a marketer, we have been used to acronyms like CPC, CPM, CPA, CPT, ROI, ROAS, etc. As a marketers, we're quite used to using acronyms and jargons to confuse our clients, right? But now is it time to get us confused with ATT, ITP, LAT, FLOC, SKAN, and all of that? These are all new terms. Should marketers learn about?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, yes. But actually, it's if CPC, CPM, and CPA, CPT, and ROI and ROS has just gone straight over your head, you've got to. These new ones are even more fun. So ATT and ITP and LAT, FLOC, and scan. So yeah, I think core to this, I think fundamentally, I think what we've got to think about is ultimately one on the left before. Everything was deterministic. You could determine who you was clicking, when they were clicking, what they were doing. Now we're in a world of probabilistic, where we're going to try to use probabilistic models to try and figure out, was it a woman? Was it a dog? Was it blue? Was it reds? We're not entirely sure, but we're going to try and make as best we can to try and figure out what's going on. So we've got a very much a before and after. It's not to say, obviously, the before is disappearing, but it's definitely going to become a little bit more interesting as to whether or not the CPA is actually a CPA, or whether or not a CPT is actually a CPT, and whether or not it came from a certain source or not. So it's going to be interesting how this actually pans out over time. But yeah, and Nick, I'll let you try and explain to the audience what some of these things are, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I mean, ATT essentially is if you know LAT is a predecessor of ATT. LAT essentially has been evolved into ATT. LAT is limited ad tracking, which has been there for quite a while now, where users can limit sharing their device ID or GID or IDFA as it's known with the advertisers and publishers. That was something which has been there for a long time. Not a lot of users know about it. Of course, it is little more prominent on Apple ecosystem since last 2-3 years. But ATT actually puts it in an extremely new realm of possibilities, because now with ATT, one is you can't track device IDs, but on top of that, you can't even do attribution based on probabilistic or fingerprinting. So basically, if you can't even do fingerprinting, which essentially fingerprinting in itself is not accurate attribution, neither it's apt name for attribution, because fingerprinting in real world is almost accurate, is almost identified 1 in a million. But when it comes to fingerprinting of attribution, it's very probabilistic. But even that is not possible with the ATT that has come up with iOS 14, and the acronym is ATT, but the full form is App Tracking Transparency. Now, I don't know what's exactly transparent about it, because as a marketer, I'm not getting any data out of it, right, Ben?
Yeah. Well, they're coming at it from the user's perspective, right? So
Yeah.
I'm a customer of Apple. I don't want people having my data, and therefore I'm given the option by Apple to not be tracked. And actually the default is actually to not be tracked. You have to opt in to be tracked and get media pushed to you. Now, ironically, if you ask me, this is actually going to make consumers have worse adverts than what they get today. If you think about it this way around, if I'm a consumer and I'm not allowing people to know who I am, what I do, what I like, or track my behavior, then advertisers are not going to be able to target me successfully with information of ads which are relevant to me. And actually, it's kind of a bit of a funny one, because as a user, I think, great, my data is protected. No one knows who I am and I'm anonymized. But now I'm going to start getting Pantene adverts, or I'm going to start getting sort of red dresses on a summer's day, and ultimately maybe I'll get cat food ads, because and I don't have a cat, right? But because there's no identifiers for me, I'm just a black box. I'm just a non-existent person in that sort of sense. And that advertisers, if I'm a publisher, I still want to sell my ad spot. And there will be advertisers who are going to buy my ad spot. So all I'm going to do is be a backfill to a publisher, and I'm going to be run ridiculously ineffective ads. And so it's actually a loss on all fronts from an advertising industry perspective, but it's also it's actually a loss for the user, ironically. And users are being told all the time that it's really bad, you're being tracked, Big Brother's watching you, and yes, to some degree, yes, but actually, if you ask me, it's actually negative for the user, because from users sometimes don't mind adverts if it's relevant, and if it's a relevant ad, they click and buy and off they go. But now irrelevancy is going to be everywhere. Efficacy is going to go completely out the window. And it's an interesting move as well, because ultimately what it means is Apple now control the user. They know who the user is. But only Apple know who the user is, and only Apple controls the user, and because the users opt out of their information going outside of Apple. So if you want to get true data around the user now, or you want to kind of be able to buy the user accurately, you're going to have to go to Apple to do those buys. You're going to have to go to Apple to identify the user. So this is the walled garden that's appearing. If you want to accurately buy and target users of Apple, you're ultimately going to have to go into Apple's ecosystem to then start doing those buys. So it's a clear wall that's being put up. They're cutting out a big chunk and saying, well, our Apple devices are our Apple customers, and if you want to buy them, you want to get accurate buying, you're going to have to come to us to do that. So it's not the first company that's going to do this, and I'm sure it's not the last that's going to do this, and it's going to get worse and worse as we go along, and these walled gardens are going to get are going to become problematic for us as the advertiser or the business, because simplistically, I'm going to go to Apple, I'm going to spend $5 out there, and I'm going to run a certain number of ads out there. But I also might go to Google and run $5. I might go to Facebook and run $5. I have zero ability to know whether that $5 has hit the same person or not. I won't be able to segment, and it could be that actually the wastage of media could definitely start to bleed. Especially with duplicated audiences, but also that transparency across channels. We won't be able to understand sort of if our money is going to the right places and is effective or not. So this is a big change, and it's basically that step in the way of the cookieless future. The cookies are going to be all but extinct in not too long a future, and this is the first of many of these changes that we're going to see in the name of privacy. But there's I'd stick my neck out a little bit to also say this is also in the name of big business from an Apple perspective, because those who own the data, the consumers and whatnot, are going to be able to sort of monetize that in a far greater way. It's interesting to see, and it's a very big change indeed. What's your thoughts, Nick?
Yeah. So essentially, what you're saying, and I agree with this, that advertiser loses with this change, because advertiser is not sure who he or she is targeting. Customer itself who is browsing those ads loses out, because he or she is being served with ads which will be probably irrelevant to that person. I might be shown ads for hair cream, right? Or you might be shown.
I'll be showing ads on how to grow hair. Yeah.
So yeah, and it's not going to be a great experience for me to see a hair cream ad on Facebook, right? And first of all, it will piss me off if nothing else.
Yeah, but you can be safe in the knowledge that my data is not being shared with anyone. No one knows who I am and what I'm doing.
Yeah, no one knows I'm bald. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, you could put a nice picture of David Hasselhoff up or something. That's very Christian.
That's a cool one. So yeah, and I mean, this is what ATT is about. I think as Ben pointed out, that deterministic attribution is history. Even fingerprinting, which is not very deterministic, is history. what we will be dependent on is whatever Apple believes is attribution, and Facebook,
Yeah.
Google, or any ad network will have to follow whatever Apple is believing. ITP, I think, is just what ATT is to apps. ITP is to web, where third-party cookies are already killed on Safari browser, and it's getting stricter with Chrome also following suit probably next year, right, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. And Google's been quite upfront about that. And that is going to be a very interesting change, because when walled gardens come in, that will be the biggest walled garden by a long shot. So yeah, I wait to see what happens then. And it's really, and the funny thing in this instance is actually Facebook are the ones to lose in all of this, actually, because they do not own the iOS, or sorry, they do not own the operating system. So whereas Google and Apple do, so that they have the ability to say who gets what, but they still keep the data at their end. It's not that they won't have the data; it's just they're not going to give it out to the likes of Facebook. So this is where it gets interesting, because all of a sudden Facebook's caught in this rock and a hard place, because all of a sudden they're not able to actually identify the users. They're not able to marry up that information and ultimately sell their advertising products, because they're getting limited visibility as to who the users are and what's going on. And these changes are going to affect a lot of things, simple things like exclusion, being able to exclude users, being able to retarget users, being able to segment users basis historical activities, building lookalike models. All of this is going to become incredibly difficult to do, because all that deterministic data is being withheld, and as more and more people opt into not sharing that information, the poorer the performance of campaigns will become, because ultimately the less detailing you're able to sort of segment on, target on, and that information is not as readily available as it was previously. So these are some big changes that are coming along, and there are Google's alternatives that's coming in, which you can see out here, the Federated Learning Cohorts, which is basically Google's answer to this, which is a probabilistic methodology using the data that Google has to try and identify the cohorts, or to try and identify those similar audiences, those interest groups, and they claim in their blogs that when they deploy their system, it will be 95% as effective as their existing systems. But honestly, I personally don't believe that would be possible, because the level of detail that's going to be passed is that before you had device identifiers, you had that the user identifiers that are getting pushed, they're getting pushed through with that device, behavioral triggers that will be pushed through. But now it's all just zeros. You're just going to get zeros passed through. So you're going to have huge amounts of data just literally washed off, and then you're going to try and build sort of probabilistic models on whatever's left. It's going to be almost a sad day for marketing as we know it digitally, because of that the ability to sort of segment and target that we have today is going to be very much a thing of the past. And this is not too long in the making. It's going to come in the next year or so for sure. And let's hold on to your seat, bums your seats time, as to see how this actually affects things. Yeah, so I don't know. It's definitely what you see today from a performance standpoint of your display campaigns, your programmatic campaigns. They are drastically going to change when this cookieless future comes in, and ultimately the best benchmarks of performance are going to almost be looking at your previous performance when you had the data, when you had the cookies, when you had the visibility, and trying to measure up what you knew was absolutely kind of determined versus what you're probably getting, and you have to kind of measure the two and go, well, this probably looks like what it used to look like, but I'm not 100% sure, and just try and measure your efficacies based on the data you're then being fed, which is not granular. You won't be able to dive into it, and I think, Nick, you touched on this, the trust that you're going to have to give to Apple and Google about what they say that a sale happened, or they say something happened, and you're just going to have to blindly trust them with no ability to sort of cross-reference, back calculate, and go back into it and sort of see whether or not this is the case or not. So I wait to see how Google handles this and what they're going to make of all of this. But if the users are not passing that information, there's no right that Google or an Apple can do to pass that through to us as advertisers. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this kind of pans out over the next year or so. And as I said, Apple's the first to jump into this in a big way, and I guess we're going to touch on how this just directly affects Facebook, but it's going to affect not just Facebook, all media systems that kind of buy into Apple and buy into the iOS systems, especially on the programmatic front as well.
That's interesting, and I think the data I read somewhere, I think data was published by AppsFlyer for opt-in versus opt-out users, and roughly 55% people were opting out, or 55 or 54, something near to that, which is a scary stat, right? I mean, this is just getting started, and even at the start, if 50% people are opting out, by the year's end, probably it will reach 80%.
Yeah. No, I can imagine as advertisers, though, I think we're going to have to relearn this. And a part of the advertising would probably be to go to the user and say, please, sir, please opt in. Please opt in so I can send you messages. So we'll have opt-in campaigns. So I can
give you a coupon. For
opt in. Yeah, I'll subsidize the advertising. Please opt in so I can target you. And maybe as an agency, my brain's ticking now. Maybe I can start running opt-in campaigns and have a cost per opt-in as an output, and another acronym for you. But yeah, that could actually well be the future. Is sort of please opt in, and how much does it cost to get them to opt in? So
yep, cool. So I think having gone through all these acronyms, I think. I mean, I'll share these slides with everyone in the audience later, and you can go through all these acronyms about LAT, ITP, ATT, etc. But I think it's important to understand the changes that Facebook has done, and more importantly, why they have done this. So just to get to that, I think first we should understand what limitations Apple has basically pushed onto Facebook and every other publisher like Facebook, and then we can quickly go through the limitations that Facebook has put in turn on advertisers. Although before we go, I just have a quick announcement to make. Next Tuesday, we'll be hosting another event for zero-click searches. This is a very important and hotly debated SEO topic, that how Google zero-click searches are on the rise, which basically puts the whole question of SEO in the question. So I'm just posting that link in the chat. So please, everyone, feel free to register for that event. Coming back to our subject, Ben, I think it's important to understand why Facebook has done all these changes, and then we'll look at those changes. So I think this is what I have been able to put together for the changes that Apple has basically forced on Facebook and all other publishers, including Google, Facebook, etc. So opt-in and opt-out, I think essentially we are looking at opt-out scenario only, because by default it's opt-out, right?
Yeah. The default is opt-out. You have to actually opt in. So it's quite a bold move by Apple to sort of. It's protecting the user's interest, protecting their data, but which means the numbers that you were talking about, the 55%, 45% that's already there, probably get worse as it goes on. So unless obviously consumers are made aware of the benefits of opting in, I don't know, people generally don't like being advertised to, but if they're going to have to be advertised to, which they will be, if they want to consume content online, then ultimately they have to accept the adverts. Then we're going to have to educate the consumer that actually by opting in, what you're shown is more relevant to you, be more useful to you, be better for you. But obviously opting out, you're just going to be pushed loads of junk, and you're going to have to deal with it. So I think a certain amount of education is going to need to go out there, maybe proactively from the advertising industry itself, to sort of hopefully tell consumers that this is not all beautiful that you can protect yourself and your data is protected, and it's also going to affect the sort of the way you experience the web as a whole. So it's a big change. Yeah.
Cool. So I think opt-in and opt-out, I think biggest question, including me, everyone will have is, I see this a lot of word here called SKAN, which seems to be everywhere. Can
Yeah.
you explain us what exactly is SKAN?
Yeah, so it's basically the Apple methodology of tracking. It's their analytics sort of solution that they've got out there. It's a very nascent system. It was kind of deployed, I think, in 2018 or something like that. And it's essentially the data. If you want to track, you're going to have to use the Apple solution. And yeah, it is kind of integrating that into your assets, into your app, into your website. And from a actual tracking capability, it's actually incredibly limited in what you can track. It for the developers of apps and sites as a whole, there's a lot of new things that you need to sort of take into account when you're sort of integrating. And yeah, it's actually a solution that's actually quite open to things like fraud. It's very difficult to verify data because ultimately you're not getting any data, but it's a solution for that Apple has kind of brought about to help on the tracking front per se.
So
In this
basically
new future.
what I understand is this SKN is SKAdnetworks, which will basically talk to publishers as well as attribution providers. So publishers like Facebook or attribution providers like MMPs like AppsFlyer, Branch, Adjust, etc. And SKAdnetwork will decide what data Apple will expose to publishers and attribution providers. Is that the right assumption?
Yeah. Yeah. And this the level of information is going to be heavily restricted basis what we already have, right? So it's nothing going to be nothing like what we have today. It's going to be a very stripped down, bare sort of bone type output. So in terms of trying to run efficacy and driving sort of more complex machine learning or AI based sort of buying basis your existing data, you're going to have very little data to kind of be passed through to work with, and ultimately it actually means, if you ask me, I think it's a bit of a cunning play from Apple's point of view, because you're going to have to integrate this into your APKs, into your devices, into your infrastructure, your web infrastructure, to sort of link up the dots and everything like that. So it gives them a claw into your infrastructure, into like you've got the Facebook pixels, like you've got analytics of Google being plugged in. You're now going to have another code which you're going to have to put into your site to sort of be able to track the behavior of Android, of iOS and Apple across your infrastructure.
Cool. I think we can quickly go through the Facebook changes that have been enforced now or will be enforced in very near future. But I'll just like to remind the viewers that if you have any questions about it, please post it in the live chat. We'll take it up towards the end of the event. Due to all of these changes, I think Facebook has come up with multiple changes to their ad structure, their campaign structure, and limitations. Here are some of the changes, right? So one app can only be linked to one ad account, but one ad account can have multiple apps promoting inside that ad account, basically, which means that if you have multiple apps, you can promote them, but one app cannot be promoted from multiple Facebook ad accounts, which I think is fair, shouldn't really be a problem for a lot of marketers, right?
No, I think that's fairly easy to work around.
Yeah,
in that sense.
And each app is limited to 9 iOS campaigns concurrently, which also should be okay for most of the advertisers unless you are running really large budgets.
Yeah, again, I don't see that being I agree on the large budgets. If you're going into very heavy sort of breakouts of your campaigns, then that obviously could also cause a little bit of a challenge as well. My assumption here is basis the limitation of the data that's coming back and Facebook's ability to understand more than this many campaigns with the data that's coming back, and to try and marry up the dots in terms of efficacy. So Facebook's going to have to change the way it tries to attribute, and with limited data coming back from iOS, if you're running lots and lots of campaigns at the same time, linking up the dots would become incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
So this is also there to limit that, and hopefully try and bring in a little bit of efficacy to the campaign, so that Facebook can actually see whether it's working or not. And if you've got too many campaigns going, then Facebook's don't have a chance in that sense. Yeah.
I think it's also a limitation from SKAdnetworks about how many campaigns they can process. But I think third point is a little bit of a problem for marketers. Maybe a little bit of problem for marketers is each campaign is limited to only 5 ad sets, and all of them can have only one optimization choice. So one ad set cannot optimize for event X while other for event Y. This might be a bit of a challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's because of the limitations of the data coming back. So you're being restricted here, and therefore the nuances of what you do are going to be heavily limited. So you're going to have to just kind of choose one campaign and run with it, and you've got very little opportunities to test and learn and change things, because you're going to be quite constricted by what you do. So yeah, yeah.
I think the next limitation is kind of really funny one, in a way that if you delete a campaign, it will still be counted as a live campaign for your 9 permitted campaigns for next 72 hours. So if you have 9 campaigns running now, if you delete one campaign today, and then if you want to create one campaign tomorrow to replace that, you will not be able to do that. You will have to wait for 72 hours.
Yeah. That's their data processing at the back end. They're going to take 72 hours to basically figure out whether it works or not. So there's quite it's going to be like that, right? And for them to then press restart again, you're going to have that gap there for them to process the information and figure stuff out. So
yep, I think that also brings to the next point, that why in the first place would you delete a campaign? Wouldn't you just turn it off? But with iOS 14 campaigns, you can't turn them off. You have to either delete them or keep them live. You cannot have campaigns in pause state.
Yeah, which is annoying.
Yeah, I mean it's quite annoying. I agree. It's Then there is this next point where each domain is limited to max 8 conversion types, which I think is fair enough. I don't think, practically speaking, you should be using more than 3 or 4 conversion types. So 8 should be more than enough, right?
Yeah. I think you've got to be really granular if you're going to go beyond 8. So maybe you've got a lead form, maybe you've got a sale that can happen, maybe you've got a download of a PDF, maybe you're tracking certain sort of behaviors on the site. But I think 8 is enough to get away with whatever you need to achieve.
In most of the cases, right?
In most of the cases, yeah, but I do know some companies and brands which have a lot more than this, up into the 30, 40s, depending upon what it is they're trying to do. So
as an agency, you should be happy. Then you'll have less reporting.
Yeah, less reporting to do, and simplifies our life for sure. But actually, again, it's a problem with efficacy, because you're not going to be able to get granular. You're getting your hands tied behind your back, and so if you want to have 40 different conversion types and measure those, you're not going to be able to. It's just some people are going to have some challenges out here.
Yeah, and that the next point is about reporting may be delayed by 3 days. I think that explains why campaign you cannot create 72 hours. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I think the next point is kind of a dampener for all marketers. No reporting at age, gender, geo, or placement level. This is a big turnoff, right?
Yeah. Say goodbye to your data. You have no idea whether you've advertised to a dog or whether or not you advertised to who you wanted to advertise to. So, it's a big challenge, and efficacy is going to dwindle, because you're not going to be able to get these segments and buy them, and see the efficacies against them. So, yeah, it's a big challenge.
And essentially, you have to trust AI of your publisher to optimize it for you.
Yeah. Full black box, and you're just trusting them blindly that it's doing the job.
So
But it's not going to be. That's the bigger problem. It's going to be black boxes everywhere. So you'll have a Facebook black box, you'll have an Apple black box, you'll have a Google black box, and you're just going to have to have blind faith in everyone that they're doing what they say they do. And cross-channel attribution modeling is going to be absolute nightmare. So you're going to have things like I've got 100 sales on Facebook, I've got 100 sales on Google, got 100 sales on Apple, and
overall, I
affiliates.
have got like 110.
Yeah, I've got 110. Yeah, exactly. So who gets the sale? I wonder. So that is definitely going to be a challenge that we're going to have to try and figure out, and it's going to be very difficult because of the things like fingerprinting not being there and being able to challenge.
Okay, cool. And the last point is you can't even define the attribution window you want anymore.
Yeah.
For iOS 14, it's strictly only 7-day click through. There is no even if you want 28-day click through or view through, you cannot do that.
You can't get it. Yeah. And that's again limitations from Apple. You're not going to be able to get that information. So you don't have the device identifier, so you don't know whether it's them or not. You're taking Apple's data for this, and
which can be a challenge for especially for high value products where the buying cycle
could be much longer. Yeah. Actually, yeah, you're right there.
Yeah, especially for cycle. Electronics products where people might actually do a lot of research before buying those products.
Yeah, that consideration period not going to be there.
Yeah, and 7 days probably is not enough for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. I think.
So, yeah, it's I think you missed on one actually, which I think is actually really a real pain in the bum as such, is the reach and frequency side of things. I think that's such an important capability for an advertiser to do, is be able to get a distinct reach. I want to talk to 100,000 people and I want to give them this many ad units. Now you cannot do that. You're just going to have to blindly buy, and it could be that you buy 100 ad units and it's the same person who gets the 100 ad units. You'll never know.
Yeah.
And you can't control it. So again, a really big challenge there in terms of media wastage and control. So you won't know if you're getting unique reach, and you won't be able to control the frequency as well. So luckily this is only for iOS at the moment, but unfortunately this is in the pipeline for the likes of Google as well. So it's going to be an interesting time that's going to come up in the next year or so for sure.
Yeah, I think I'll just take one of the questions. It's a very interesting question our old friend Robin has. Now he says that if you delete a campaign, then Data Studio cannot pull deleted campaigns data. So if you delete a campaign for iOS 14, then is that data lost forever for third-party sources like Data Studio?
So as far as my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, is that Data Studio will pull it and process it, put it into its own database. It's going to reference from there anyway. Is that not the case, or is it? It's not a. It's going to. But obviously, once you've deleted it, that data is no longer going to be coming anyway. But whatever you historically pulled into the Data Studio environment will be there as data stored within the Google ecosystem.
Not necessarily. If you have put it in a spreadsheet and you're using that spreadsheet as a
okay,
then it will remain. But if you're using the live link to Facebook connector, then it may not remain there. But I think anyway, I think putting data in some kind of spreadsheet or SQL or some database and then pulling it into Data Studio is always a preferable way for
preferred way, because yeah, exactly. If you're storing it somewhere first, then that's it's on you. Yeah, if you're using sort of
you can keep reprocessing that data in multiple different ways.
Yeah. So you get around this problem just because you're bringing it in and processing it.
Yeah. Robin also says that sounds like UAC 2.0. I guess this is UAC 6.0. Cool. I think I will just wait for users if they have a few more questions. I have come to an end from my side. Ben, if you want to ask me anything or add anything, please feel free.
No, I think it's interesting times. As I said, I think this is the first cut of 1,000 when it comes into digital advertising. Data privacy is getting uh, more and more prevalent, more and more front stage, and consumers are saying, "I want my privacy," and this is advertisers are going to bear the brunt of it. And it's going to be interesting because media is not going to decrease in value per se. It's going to just get more expensive to buy the customers because you're going to have to do larger sprays and praise to get hold of the customer, and you're not going to be so targeted anymore. So it's going to be an interesting future with these things. But I wait to see sort of what the likes of Google and Facebook do to counter these challenges, and whether or not they're able to build good probabilistic models which give a good response and are able to sort of get you back to the levels that you would have had previously. But I think one thing that is for sure is to definitely benchmark where you are today. If you're running campaigns, you've been running campaigns on iOS, benchmark what you have, and then you've got a kind of clear indication. And when you're moving forwards and you've got less information coming back, at least you can sort of benchmark against when you had the good old days. You can see where you are against that good old days, and hopefully maybe make good decisions to see whether or not you're moving in the right direction or not. But interesting times. But
Yeah,
yeah,
interesting
Nick.
times ahead.
Yeah, how do you see it from an analytics perspective, like especially from an attribution side of things? Because that bit's really interesting to me. It's like reach frequency, but then attribution across platforms.
I think
Absolute nightmare.
deterministic attribution is definitely an history.
It's dead. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we should even like try to get
Mention it.
there now.
Yeah.
It's about probabilistic attribution, and it's. I mean, as a marketer, I think the faster you embrace it, the faster you accept it, it would be better for you. There is no fighting this change. It's better accept it and embrace it and learn about it. So from attribution perspective, there is definitely there might be a situation where the entire third party attribution might be put under the scope. I mean, it may not seem like worth the investment.
Yeah.
I have one more question from user. I'll just quickly take that. Will this only affect the Facebook paid campaigns or also have an impact on organic marketing part, which advertisers would run along with paid? Ben, you are the organic guru
So,
here, so
so it shouldn't affect actually your organic side of things, because basically the biggest challenge that's going to arise from this is the identity. Say organically, someone's going to click or they're not going to click, and if you're there, someone's going to click on you, right? And that's going to still stay the same in some sort of formal function. The data analytics behind the organic of what you're doing is going to be tricky because that sort of the user profiling or the age, gender, geos, these sorts of things might be difficult to sort of trace back. So you're going to get a lot more unidentified traffic coming in. But the bigger challenge is from a media standpoint, because obviously as a media buyer, you want to be able to buy a 40-year-old male who drives a Porsche and lives in Kentucky, and those sorts of attributes and those identifiers which allow you to do that are being sort of scrubbed away. So the ability to sort of target is being kind of taken away from you, and therefore the ability to also to report on that is being taken away from you. But from an organic, if you follow what you're doing today and kind of and that's getting you results, that shouldn't be affected by this in too big a way. It will be from a understanding who your organic audience is, but directly it's not like if you're getting X number today, that number should stay the same. It's not going to affect the rankings in Google, for example, or that side of it. That's my take on it, Nick. But
I agree, and Gauri was just supplementing that question that she was talking about Facebook organic post, not SEO. But I think the logic applies to both.
It still applies to both. Yeah.
And I also believe that organic should ideally, the contribution of organic should ideally go up, because Apple enforcing the shorter attribution windows or ideally the contribution of organic visits or conversions should go up, right, Ben?
Yeah, it's forced it to go up, I guess. It's
Yeah.
just it'll be a natural sort of knock-on effect because of the change that's happened. So yeah, yeah, whatever you're doing today, if that's working, it should work tomorrow because it's Facebook's choice. It's out. This is nothing to do with what Apple's done, the organic side of things. It's Facebook algorithms that determine what content ranks and comes up. So you have to pander to Facebook if you want to get your organic to move. It's just going to change the media efficacy of buying Facebook ads on iOS devices. So, yeah.
There is one more question from Neha. She's asking about what are your initial thoughts about impact on CACs? And I just have one word for it. It's going up.
Your CACs are going up. Yeah, sorry. This is specifically for iOS at the moment, but your CACs will definitely go up. You're not going to be able to target as effectively as you were doing before, and you're blindly putting faith in Apple, and you're also going to have to blindly put faith in Facebook. And so you've got a black box talking to a black box, and they're going to do your buy for you. So you're just going to have to try and trust blindly two big giants. And maybe they talk very nicely to each other and your CACs go the other way, but I doubt it somehow.
I doubt that.
I doubt it somehow. I think CACs are going to go up.
Cool. There is one more question. Are these changes taken shape already, or they are in process as we speak? So from what I know, these changes are not officially enforced yet. They should be, from what I know, they should be enforced during this quarter sometime. There are no fixed date on those as of now. But for all practical purposes, I have already seen impact on all the iOS campaigns that I have seen in last 2-3 months have taken a huge hit, right, Ben?
Yeah, it's been the case across the board.
Yeah,
cool. The performance is down, and yeah, I agree.
Cool. So these changes may or may not have officially taken place yet, but impact is already there, and anyway, these will be officially hit us, so to speak, during this quarter sometime.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's it from questions. So for the audience, I'll just have a quick update. I will share this presentation as I said. Please subscribe to my newsletter on mygrowthclub.com, and I will mail everyone the recording link of this session along with the PPT. And Ben, thanks a lot for joining. It was really fun catching up.
It's fun. It's been
a long
great.
time.
It has been, it's been a very long time, But yeah, thanks, Nick. Thanks for having me.
And thanks everyone for joining the audience. It was fun. Your questions were really interesting enough.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ben. See you next time.